The Judiciary Committee is now reviewing the record of Elena Kagan, President Obama's nominee to the Supreme Court. The truth is, her legal record is thin. She has never been a judge and has very limited experience even in the practice of law. She has never tried a case, never cross-examined a witness, or made a closing argument in a trial. Now, a lack of judicial experience is not a total disqualifier for the job of Supreme Court Justice, but it is true and fair to say that this nominee has less real legal experience than any nominee confirmed to the court in the last 50 years. We know that one thing, we do know her political views are leftist and progressive. That's clear from her record, and she has a rather extensive political record. But with no judicial record and little legal record, clues to Ms. Kagan's judicial philosophy can be found perhaps by looking at people she admires, her mentors, judges she thinks represent the best way of conducting their office. The three judges that Ms. Kagan most often mentions are Judge Abner Mikva, Justice Thurgood Marshall, and former Israeli Judge Aaron Barak. Together, I think it's fair to say these three judges represent the vanguard of a judicial activist movement. In effect, this philosophy argues that the outcome of the case is more important than the legal process that guides the decisions and fidelity to the Constitution. These Kagan heroes believe that judges should have the power, I think it's fair to say, make law. This results-oriented philosophy causes us concern that Ms. Kagan may see judicial power as a way to advance her philosophy. Judge Mikva is someone with whom she has been close. He was appointed to the bench by President Obama to the President Carter a number of years ago to the Court of Appeals. She clerked for Judge Mikva in 1986 and 87 and later worked for him in the Clinton White House. After he had resigned from the bench and came into the Clinton White House, she was hired to work with him in that office. On the day she accepted President Obama's nomination, Ms. Kagan noted that Judge Mikva, quote, represented the best in public service, that working for him was part of the great good fortune that had marked her career. He has advocated for strict gun control, reportedly referring to the National Rifle Association as a street crime lobby. He was a fierce opponent of the war in Vietnam and has said he supports the result in Roe v. Wade. The result in Roe v. Wade. Results seem to be important. Ms. Kagan also clerked for Justice Thurgood Marshall, whom she refers to as her hero. Indeed, Marshall was a historic figure. He was a courageous, at a time when courage was definitely needed, and an effective leader in the civil rights movement. He was a great attorney and a fierce advocate for his clients and his ideals. And he could be a hero of anyone as an American advocate and a person who played a fundamental role in the breakdown of segregation in America. But he also became one of the most active judges on the court in our nation's history. And describing his own judicial philosophy, Marshall said that, quote, you do what you think is right and let the law catch up, close quote. But interestingly, the judge that Ms. Kagan praises the most happens to be perhaps the most activist judge on earth. Aaron Barak, the former president or chief justice of Israel's Supreme Court, the respected judge, federal judge Richard Posner, flatly described Barak as, quote, a judicial activist. Elena Kagan described him as her judicial hero. To judicial activists around the world, Aaron Barak is an icon. After inviting him to Harvard, Ms. Kagan called him, quote, a great, great judge, close quote, who, quote, presided over the development of one of the most principled legal systems in the world, close quote. Her comments are troubling to anyone who believes in limited government and democracy and a limited role for judges. Under Barak, the Israeli court assumed extraordinary governmental power over the people of Israel. The basic democratic rights that we take for granted in our country were ignored in his actions. The unelected court in Israel assumed the authority to set aside legislation and executive actions when there were disagreements about policy, not a violation of the Constitution, but disagreements about policy that would alter the meaning of enacted laws and override even national defense measures. Judge Povner wrote that Barak inhabits, quote, a completely different and to an American, a weirdly different juristic universe, close quote. And what is Judge Barak's philosophy as he expresses it? He says, quote, the judge may give a statute new meaning. The judge may give a statute new meaning that seeks to bridge the gap between law and life-changing reality without changing the statute itself. The statute remains as it was, but its meaning changes because the court has given it a new meaning that suits new societal needs. Well, I would say that Justice Barak let the cat out of the bag. In America, activist judges firmly deny this is what they're doing, but in reality, often that is exactly what they're doing. President Obama's press secretary, Robert Gibbs, just recently described the president himself as results-oriented when it comes to law and judging. Amazingly, Gibbs said this about President Obama's view of judging, quote, the president is a very pragmatic person who is far less wedded to the process and the mechanics of how you get something done and more wedded to what the results will be. He is results-oriented. So it's fair to ask, does she agree with her heroes? Does she agree with her president? Does she see her lifetime appointment to the court as an opportunity to do and promote ideas she desires and let the law catch up? To that question, we cannot simply accept a confirmation testimony. I will follow the Constitution. Too often, nominees have testified before the committee like Chief Justice John Roberts and gone on to rule more like Aaron Barak. Lip service to the rule of law is not enough. But we do need to know, is this her philosophy of law? What kind of judge will she be? Isn't it true that a person's heroes tell a great deal about who they really are? Few would dispute that these heroes of hers represent three of the most well-known activist judges in the world. So I think that the questions are important. As I've said before, I will oppose, and every senator should oppose, any nominee who does not understand and fully accept that their duty is to serve, as the oath says, quote, under the Constitution and laws of the United States.